He doesn't know why he still dreams of her, only that something in him still belongs to her. There is something unspoken about her. You feel her before you see her, not because she walks louder or dresses brighter or speaks more, but because her energy has roots. She is not floating, she is anchored, and that anchoring creates a pull that doesn't ask for attention, it simply commands it. She is the woman who remembers, not just where she came from, but who she is beneath the layers, before the roles, before the expectations, before the heartbreaks that tried to convince her to shrink. She has returned to her own center, and that return is what makes her unforgettable. The invisible collapse, when pleasing becomes self-erasure. Many women unknowingly fall into a subtle distortion. They believe that in order to be loved, they must become less opinionated, less intense, less radiant. They start dimming their truth in exchange for belonging. But the moment you compromise your essence to maintain affection, you stop emanating frequency and start emitting need. And frequency attracts. Need repels. This is the silent trap of the magnetic woman who becomes invisible. She exchanges her wild soul for approval. She performs femininity like a role, smiling, adjusting, molding, while her core quietly withers beneath the costume. And here's the truth few dare to say: authenticity is more powerful than beauty. A woman can be breathtaking, but if her energy is leaking from self-abandonment, she becomes forgettable. Because the feminine doesn't seduce, it reveals. She reveals not her skin, but her soul. And the soul, when shown without apology, leaves fingerprints on the masculine psyche that time cannot erase. Emotional anchoring, the science behind soul imprints. In neuroscience, there's a phenomenon known as emotional tagging. It explains why certain memories never fade, not because of what happened, but because of how it felt. The stronger the emotion, the deeper the memory. When a woman expresses her emotional truth with clarity, whether through a single tear, a steady gaze, or a silence filled with meaning, she creates a neural anchor in the other. The moment fuses with intensity, and the brain can't let it go. It's not about drama. It's not about being too much. It's about resonating in such an authentic way that the memory becomes a tattoo on the soul. She doesn't try to impress. She simply feels. And because she feels with integrity, she leaves a trace that doesn't fade with time. It only grows more vivid in her absence. The feminine paradox, the absence that becomes more present. What if I told you that the loudest women are not the ones most remembered? That it's not the one who stayed the longest or tried the hardest that haunts his heart, but the one who left without a single scream, carrying her silence like a crown. A woman who leaves without bitterness, but with a quiet sense of self-worth, opens a mirror inside the man's heart, a mirror he didn't know he needed, and suddenly in her absence, he sees his own incompleteness reflected back. He may not understand it, he may even resist it, but her silence becomes an echo, not because she was cold, but because she was whole enough to walk away without making herself smaller. There is a sacred force in feminine departure when it comes from alignment. It's not revenge, it's not manipulation, it's clarity. And clarity has a frequency that burns brighter than words. The sacred cup, a metaphor for the receptive power that transforms. Imagine a chalice made of obsidian and gold. It doesn't chase the wine, it simply opens to receive it. And in doing so, it contains the essence. This is the feminine principle in its highest form, receptivity. Not passivity, but intentional, dignified openness. The woman who knows how to hold space rather than fill silence, who knows how to receive without needing, becomes magnetic because she activates something ancient. The masculine doesn't seek completion in a woman, he seeks invitation. And the chalice invites him to descend into himself, to taste the mystery of the sacred, to feel emotions he didn't know he was allowed to have. The true power of feminine energy lies not in her efforts, but in her containment. She holds the moment, she holds the mirror, she holds the mystery. And men never forget the woman who made them remember their own soul. A ritual for reclaiming your frequency, the return to self. If you've been performing femininity, if you've been chasing instead of attracting, if you've been giving while feeling depleted, come back. Not to a version of you shaped by pain, but to the part of you that existed before the world told you who to be. Find a quiet place. Sit with your spine upright and hands resting gently over your womb space. Breathe deeply into your belly and say silently, I remember, I return, I receive. Then visualize a warm amber light glowing from within your center, not the center of your body, but the center of your being. Let it expand, let it vibrate, let it anchor. Do not seek to attract. Simply vibrate from your truth. Because the woman who vibrates from truth doesn't need to be remembered. She becomes unforgettable. The woman who cannot be replaced. Archetypes that mark a man's soul. She wasn't perfect, but she was true, and that's why he never forgot her. There are women a man forgets in a week, and women who live in his mind for decades, not because they were flawless, not because they were easy, but because they touched something in him that no one else had access to. And that kind of touch doesn't fade, it imprints, not on the skin, but on the psyche, not in memory, but in myth. Because when a woman embodies something sacred, something that whispers of truth and wounds and longing, she stops being just a person. She becomes symbol. And symbols are eternal. The woman who revealed what was missing, and it wasn't perfection. Men don't remember the woman who fit their list. They remember the one who broke it. She didn't complete him. She awakened what he didn't know was missing. She didn't make him whole. She revealed his emptiness with grace. She didn't try to be ideal. She dared to be real. There was a kind of woman who doesn't soothe a man's ego, but instead speaks to his ache. And while that might not make her the easiest love, it makes her unforgettable. Because what we cannot replace is not what pleased us. It's what moved us, what confronted us, what mirrored us in ways we weren't ready for. Carl Jung and the Anima, when a woman awakens a man's inner myth. Carl Jung described the anima as the feminine soul within every man, an inner archetype that holds his emotional depth, intuition, longing, and vulnerability. Most men are disconnected from this part of themselves. They're trained to suppress it, to mock it, to deny it. But then a woman enters, and she doesn't just love him, she reflects him. She embodies aspects of the anima he has never met before. Not just softness, but chaos. Not just beauty, but wisdom. Not just passion, but silence. She becomes a symbol, a living, breathing mirror of everything he has repressed, feared, or longed for in secret. He may try to rationalize it. He may try to move on. But deep in his dreams, in his art, in his quiet moments, she remains. Because once an archetype is awakened, it cannot be unfelt. The forgotten paradox, the woman who wasn't trying to be remembered. The more a woman tries to be irreplaceable, the more she becomes replaceable. Effort smells like fear. Control tastes like ego. But the woman who simply is, who doesn't need to explain her worth, who doesn't perform love but inhabits it, she leaves a deeper impression. She's not remembered because she asked to be. She's remembered because her presence activated something sacred, and then she let go. It's the paradox of feminine surrender. The less she grasps, the more she stays. The less she explains, the more she echoes. A man might forget the woman who clung to him,
but he'll never forget the one who trusted herself enough to release him. The mirror of obsidian, the archetype of reflective presence. Obsidian is not like other mirrors. It doesn't flatter, it doesn't filter. It shows shadows, raw and untouched. The woman who embodies this mirror doesn't shine artificial light. She doesn't try to illuminate the man's path. She reflects what he needs to see, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's painful. And because of that, she becomes a portal, not to fantasy, but to truth. Men are drawn to this mirror and terrified by it at the same time, because to face her is to face himself, and most aren't ready. But even if he runs, he remembers. Even if he resists, her reflection lingers. Because once you've seen yourself clearly in someone's presence, no other mirror satisfies. A practice to invoke the archetype without forcing connection. You don't need to perform emotional depth to be felt. You don't need to explain your intuition to be trusted. You don't need to try to be unforgettable. You only need to return to your natural presence, the one that exists before fear. Here's a way to reclaim that space. Sit in silence. Place one hand on your chest, the other on your lower belly. Close your eyes and feel the rhythm between them, your truth rising from the gut, your grace resting in the heart. Then, open your eyes slowly and speak only if the words arise from the center. Say less, feel more. Let your pauses be louder than your points. Let your breath be your punctuation. Let your gaze be your voice. Remember, the woman who doesn't try to be remembered becomes unforgettable. Emotional resonance, the sacred pulse men can't explain. A woman who doesn't scream vibrates louder in a man's heart. Some women are remembered not for what they said, but for what they made others feel without a single word. Their presence wasn't loud, but it was true. And truth has a pulse. You can't always explain it, but it moves through you like a rhythm you didn't know you missed. This is emotional resonance. It is the sacred pulse, the kind men can't understand with their minds, only with their nervous systems. They may forget your face, they may forget your name, but they never forget how their heartbeat shifted around you. The self-sabotage of trying to be magnetic. There's a trap hidden in spiritual performance. The more you try to be magnetic, the more your energy screams, "I'm not enough." You meditate, you wear flowing dresses, you speak slowly and say all the right things. But something is off. It's effortful, curated, hollow. Because magnetism is not created, it's remembered. You don't become magnetic. You remove what blocks your real frequency from vibrating freely. Trying too hard always distorts your field. The sacred feminine is not about effort, it's about essence. And essence can't be faked. It's like petrichor, the smell of earth after rain. It arrives only when the soul has been watered by something real. The resonance effect, when emotion becomes a frequency. In physics, resonance occurs when one object vibrates in harmony with another, causing it to vibrate too, without contact. The same happens emotionally. A woman in her authentic frequency activates something ancient in a man. It's not seduction, it's remembrance. He doesn't know why he feels safe, or awakened, or unsettled. But he does, because your energy has entered his field and stirred something he'd buried. You've reminded him of a mother's unconditional gaze, of a lover's depth, of a home he's never physically known, but always spiritually longed for. This is the resonance the mind cannot name, but the heart refuses to forget.
Beauty may attract, but emotion enchants. It's easy to be admired, harder to be felt, and rare to be remembered. Many women spend years perfecting aesthetics, but the masculine doesn't imprint on visual perfection. It imprints on emotional depth. What stays is not the angle of your jaw, but the tremble in your voice when you whispered truth. Not the elegance of your posture, but the courage in your silence.
Men become addicted not to the predictable, but to the enigmatic pulse of a woman who dares to feel fully and let him feel too. A real moment, the silence that became unforgettable. He expected a reaction. He pushed her away with pride, certain she'd plead or perform pain. But she simply smiled and said, "It's okay, I am a silence too." That moment never left him, not because she was indifferent, but because she was complete. She didn't argue, she didn't chase, she became still. And in that stillness, he heard everything he had refused to listen to before. Her silence broke his pattern. Her calm ruptured his ego. And that's how she stayed, not in his bed, but in his soul. Athena's wisdom vibrating before speaking. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, clarity, and sacred strategy, never needed to raise her voice. She whispered truths that echoed for lifetimes. In the temple of your own energy, let Athena guide you. Speak not from fear, but from presence. Let your words be offerings, not demands. Let your pauses carry weight. Let your gaze deliver truth no sentence could hold. You are not here to explain yourself. You are here to remember yourself. And in that remembering, your vibration does the talking. Ritual of resonance. Activate your sacred frequency before any encounter. Before you enter a space, or meet a man, or speak your truth, touch your sternum, the center of your chest, with 2 fingers. Close your eyes. Breathe into that space as if it were a doorway, and say silently, "I allow my vibration to arrive before my words." Then speak, not to be heard, but because you're already felt. This is how you become unforgettable, not by proving, but by resonating, not by performing, but by embodying. Because when a woman vibrates with soul integrity, no one forgets the sound of her silence. Athena's whispers, the feminine wisdom that echoes in a man's mind. She whispered something he didn't understand at the time, and now he hears it always. There are words you forget the moment they're spoken, and then there are whispers. Whispers that come not from the lips, but from the soul, from the womb, from a place older than logic. A true whisper is a frequency. It doesn't scream, it doesn't argue, it doesn't need to be repeated because it never leaves. Some women speak with such clarity that even silence becomes unforgettable. They don't try to be heard, they are the echo. The trap of the over-spiritual woman. Light without depth. In her quest for evolution, many women try to rise above pain. They become ethereal, distant, almost untouchable. They confuse transcendence with disconnection. They think, if I'm evolved, I won't feel anger. If I'm awakened, I won't need anyone. If I'm spiritual, I must always be light. But what they lose is their humanness, their warmth, their edge, their capacity to move another deeply. The masculine doesn't long for a divine hologram. He yearns for soul contact, for realness, for a woman who is not above emotion, but inside it, walking through it with sacred dignity. Athena was a goddess, yes, but she never disconnected from her mind, her sword, or her voice. She stood firmly in paradox, deep wisdom, sharp clarity, fierce presence. That's the whisper that stays. The neuroscience of whispered truth. Why he remembers. Science shows that emotionally charged moments are stored differently. The brain doesn't just record words, it records tone, timing, gesture. A phrase whispered with meaning bypasses logic and lands directly in the emotional brain. A woman who says one sentence with full embodiment, eye contact, and presence can leave a scar of truth in a man's psyche. Not the kind that wounds, the kind that awakens. He may not remember the conversation, but he'll remember the pulse. He'll remember the air thickening. He'll remember how everything got quiet inside him when she spoke. And even years later, that whisper will rise, like a forgotten melody coming back in the dark. The power of what's not said. Words are useful, but the feminine doesn't always teach through language. She teaches through space. A sacred silence says more than 1,000 spiritual quotes. A pause, well held, can expose every truth the other is avoiding. And when a woman sits in her silence without fear, that silence becomes a portal. The masculine listens more closely in stillness than in noise. He hears not with ears, but with memory. That's the power of the feminine whisper. It doesn't convince, it invites. It doesn't argue, it haunts. And that haunting is holy. A true story. The woman who said no and echoed for 27 years. He asked for more time. She looked at him gently and replied, "Time doesn't change what's already clear." Then she left, without anger, without resistance, just presence.
27 years passed. He married someone else. He traveled the world. But sometimes, in the quiet of his mornings, he would hear that sentence, not as a regret, but as a reminder. She didn't say it to be remembered. She said it because it was true. And truth never dies. Athena's gaze, the sober clarity that cuts through illusion. Athena doesn't shout, she doesn't seduce, she sees. And the man who meets a woman with the eyes of Athena feels suddenly naked, not because she undresses his body, but because she undresses his illusions. Her truth isn't emotional manipulation. It's clean, it's precise. It cuts, but it doesn't wound. It opens. That kind of feminine power doesn't fade. It lingers, it teaches, it transforms. Not because she stayed to explain, but because her whisper did the work. Archetypal whisper practice, planting seeds of truth in the male psyche. Before speaking anything meaningful, pause. Ask yourself, is this coming from my essence or from my fear? Then speak slowly. Use fewer words. Use more presence. Let each syllable fall like a seed into the other's unconscious. If it's the right seed, it will grow in time. Even if he forgets the moment, he won't forget the message. This is feminine strategy. This is sacred timing. This is Athena's whisper. Timeless, soft, cutting, unforgettable. The symbolic woman, when the feminine becomes myth. He doesn't remember her clearly anymore, but something in him still belongs to her. Not every woman becomes a symbol, but when she does, she's no longer just her. She's a doorway, a mirror, an archetype. She doesn't just pass through a man's life, she enters his psyche. And once inside, she doesn't knock again. She just echoes. He might forget her laugh, her scent, even her name, but there's a feeling she left behind, a vibration, a silence, a gaze that continues to shape his longing. Because what touches the soul doesn't obey time. It belongs to the language of myth. When the feminine awakens the inner labyrinth, inside every man there is a place untouched by logic, a space where memory and mystery collide, where old wounds wait in silence and ancestral dreams still breathe. The symbolic woman doesn't enter through the front door. She enters through the wound. She walks gently into what he thought was numb, and suddenly he feels. Not comfort, not pleasure, but depth. She reminds him of something he never fully understood, not because she completes him, but because she makes him more aware of his incompleteness. And in that awareness, she becomes sacred. Archetypes live longer than people. There are women he dates, women he desires, women he forgets. And then there is the one he dreams,
the one who appears in metaphors, in strange synchronicities, in songs that stop him mid-step on a random Tuesday. She was never his because she was never trying to be. She belonged to something older than their story, and so she became a symbol, just like Athena, not a lover, not a mother, but a frequency, a knowing, a presence that teaches without asking to be understood. She becomes myth because she never begged to be real. What is symbolic cannot be replaced. You can replace company. You can replace routine. You can replace familiarity, but you cannot replace what made you see yourself. The woman who mirrored his fears, his unspoken grief, his deepest truth, she is not a memory. She is a threshold. He can build a new life. He can forget the details. But when he looks at the stars, when he sits alone with a decision, when he aches and doesn't know why, she is there. Because some women don't touch the man. They awaken the man inside the man. Athena's legacy. Why the mind forgets, but the soul doesn't. Athena, in ancient myth, was never just a goddess of war. She was strategy. She was wisdom. She was the eye that sees through illusion, the sword that cuts the false from the real. Her presence in a man's life wasn't loud, but it was final. She didn't try to belong. She appeared, revealed, whispered, and vanished. But her essence remained. The symbolic woman does the same. She doesn't demand a place. She creates a rift, a sacred opening that nothing else can quite fill. And that's why he never forgets. Not because she stayed, but because she altered him. Practice, embodying the unforgettable without needing to be. You don't need to explain your depth. You only need to honor it.
Here's how. Close your eyes. Place one hand on your chest, one on your lower belly. Breathe into the space between them, the access of your intuition and expression. And silently say, I don't exist to be understood. I exist to awaken. Then release any need to prove yourself. Let your life become myth in motion. Let your silence say what words never could. Let your presence be the whisper he still hears long after forgetting your voice. You are not here to be remembered. You are here to mark the soul. She who vibrates without effort, the feminine that moves the unseen. She didn't plan to leave a mark. She didn't rehearse her presence. She didn't wear the right dress or say the right words or master the right vibration. She simply arrived, whole. And something in the room shifted. Something subtle, something unexplainable, but undeniably felt. Because when a woman vibrates in truth, she doesn't need to convince anyone. She becomes impossible to ignore. The feminine pulse, moving the field without moving the body. True feminine magnetism isn't loud. It doesn't chase. It doesn't need a strategy. It just is. It's the smell of jasmine at midnight, the feeling of being watched in a dream, the sensation that something ancient just passed you by, even if she didn't speak a word. The woman who vibrates without effort doesn't control the room. She changes it. Her energy rearranges the emotional furniture. It brings up old grief, forgotten tenderness, unexplored longing. Because she isn't there to entertain. She's there to remind. The error of trying to be vibrationally attractive. Many women today fall into the illusion of doing vibrational attraction. They affirm, they script, they visualize. But underneath it all is a frequency of lack. I need to vibrate higher, or I won't be seen. That's not resonance. That's performance. True resonance can't be hacked. It arises when the inner and outer are aligned, when thought, feeling, and body say the same thing. You don't attract by trying to be magnetic. You attract by being undeniably you.
and holding your field steady when the world wants you to shrink. That's the pulse he feels. Not your technique, but your truth. Athena's whisper, walk like you belong to the earth. Athena never rushed. She didn't giggle to be liked. She didn't tiptoe through rooms afraid of being too much. She walked like she belonged. To the earth, to her body, to her knowing. And so should you. When a woman walks fully inhabited with her belly relaxed, her gaze steady, her energy anchored in truth, everything responds. Not because she is performing power, but because she is rooted in something deeper than power. She is rooted in presence, and presence is the most erotic, disarming, unforgettable force on this planet. A real moment. The woman who just sat there. She wasn't the loudest, she wasn't the prettiest, she didn't even speak much, but he kept looking at her. Why? Because she was there. Not halfway, not trying, not editing herself. She breathed. She noticed. She sipped her wine slowly. And in her stillness, he felt something he hadn't felt in years, himself. That's the final key. The unforgettable woman doesn't hypnotize with fantasy. She awakens reality. And that kind of presence doesn't vanish. Become the frequency, not the effort. Before entering any space, touch your lower belly. Ground your breath into it. Feel your spine elongate as if Athena herself were resting behind you. Then say silently, I don't need to try. I already am. Let your shoulders drop. Let your gaze soften. Let your energy extend 2 steps ahead of your body. You are not here to impress. You are here to resonate. And when your field is clean, sovereign, and whole, you don't attract. You remember others of who they are. And that, my love, is the kind of woman a man never forgets.